Hey guys, DesolatorMagic here, and it's finally time to make the #1 most requested video in my channel's history. We're finally covering Pauper, which is an alternative format for Magic the Gathering. Now, as far as alternative formats go, I mean, you got Tiny Leaders, which was a disaster because it had a smaller pool than Commander, but it was basically the same exact thing. So it was easily solvable, and I heard that the people tried to copyright the name so they could collect royalties on it or something. Don't know if that was true or not, but they did everything they could to kill it, including, I think it didn't initially have a ban list. So that was just a bad idea. Then we go to the new craze, Frontier, which just straight up has the wrong starting point, period. That's about all you need to say, other than the fact that it's basically a scam to sell cards and is being aggressively promoted for that purpose. Nobody wants another static start point format. Nobody. Nobody wants that. It'll just become a stale pile of crap just like Modern, and all it does is drain money away from Modern. Oh, and make Standard more expensive, so that's a disaster waiting to happen. But then we can move into, formats that people absolutely love, like Plane Chase, but still nobody plays. I mean, I've never heard anybody say they don't like Plane Chase. I mean, unless you're like a psychotic control freak, like a modern net decker will say. Some people don't like the chaos, like the uncontrollability and the variance. They want the game to run the exact same way so that they can say they won and feel all special, even though they didn't even think of the deck, they just copied it off the internet. But other than that, the other 99% of people love Plane Chase, but still nobody plays it. And I mean, cost is a factor. It's expensive, but other than the cards themselves, which you could just use an app or just print them off. I don't usually approve of proxying or whatever, or not buying things. But $149.99 and 4 decks I don't want. No thanks, Wizards. You could support single sellers who are disassembling them and buy just the Plane Chase cards, though. Still, Plane Chase just isn't that popular, and it's probably because it's not even a true format. It's like an expansion pack, or DLC if you're not as old as me. Dude, I'm like OG Age of Empires #1, man. I'm gonna call it an expansion pack. It's just like a meta add-on to any other format, so you can play standard Plane Chase with nothing but standard decks. So if that's super fun, why isn't it super popular? I mean, I really have no answer for that. So even stranger, how did somebody come up with a new format that did take off, that a ton of people play? This is such a hyper-popular format. Now, according to the Wikipedia page on it, I guess nobody really knows who started it. Either that or they didn't feel like writing that in the article. The funny thing is they refer to it as a Magic Online specific format, which kind of implies that it was invented by Wizards. That seems a bit odd. Now, it's hard to say that somebody even invented Pauper because the concept is so simple. Here's how Pauper works. Commons only. The end. That's it. I mean, you could have thought of that. I'm sure people were playing Pauper 20 years ago before it was even really a thing. They just said, hey, let's play a game but only use commons. Okay, cool. Now, the just drastically inaccurate wiki page about this says, Pauper is a Magic Online specific format. It does not extend to physical cards. Yeah, it does. Therefore, the term paper Pauper is used to distinguish it from its MTGO counterpart. Yeah, no, it's not. Nobody says that. I've never heard that term in my entire life. If anything, Pauper is way more popular with paper than it is online. The other thing they claim is that paper Pauper has no official ban list, even though it does, and it's the same ban list as the one that's used online. So let me just clear that right up. Speaking of that, why is this format still around when there obviously are still broken as all hell decks? It's because of the ban list, and you're going to be not surprised at all what culprits are on that list. It's the typical suspects. It's cards that either are banned in Modern or should be banned in Modern. The perpetual troublemakers, like for example, Cranial Plating. That card was a mistake to print, let's be honest. Then we've got Temporal Fissure, which, return target permanent to its owner's hand, Storm. Anything with the word Storm on it, yeah. I could see why they would ban that. Storm is OP as hell. I mean, they should just take Cascade and Storm and just ban it from everything. Just ban it from every single format universally. Hell, take Infect with it. We don't want that either. Anyway, the next banned card is Frantic Search. I could see why this one would be banned. I mean, just by itself. Draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, untap up to 3 lands. So in other words, cast it for free. I'm just going to take a wild guess this is probably a component of a Storm deck. You up your Storm count by 1 and you draw 2 cards with it. I mean, who thought this was okay? Oh, it was printed in Urza's Legacy. That makes sense. Then we've got Empty the Warrens. Oh, look, it's a Storm card. This is my surprise face. And then there's Grape Shot, which honestly should be banned from Modern. Oh, look, it's a Storm card. Next up is Cloud of Fairies. Let's see if we can figure this one out together. It's a 1/1 flyer for 2, and when it enters the battlefield, untap up to 2 lands. Plus it has cycling. I'm just gonna have to assume it was a Storm card. They have basically banned Storm from the format. Like, they had to hit like so many cards to do it, but Storm is an unfair mechanic. Next up is Invigorate. Now, I've never heard of this spell. This seems a little bit messed up. It says it costs 3, but it really doesn't. You could just have your opponent gain 3 life, which honestly doesn't mean balls if you're going to hit them with Infact, which I assume is probably what people are doing with this, considering target creature gets +4/+4. Plus, you're doing 4 more damage and giving them 3 life. I mean, you just add lifelink to that and it's a huge net gain. Oh, then there's everybody's favorite, Cloud Post. This is banned from just about everything. Cloud Post does come into play tapped, but you can tap it to add 1 generic mana to your mana pool for each locus in play. I don't know what a locus is, but I assume you could get a lot of them out. That's a little bit of mana. Next up, surprise, 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 it's Treasure Cruise. That card was a No Man's Sky level mistake. And finally, the most recent addition to the ban list and a very fitting card, Peregrine Drake. I don't know what it did, but I could imagine, considering when it enters the battlefield, you get to untap 5 lands. Could be a Storm card, I don't know. Now, my problem specifically with Peregrine Drake is that it was initially printed as an uncommon, then it was reprinted as an uncommon, and then for absolutely no reason it was printed as a common in Eternal Masters. So in my opinion, it's not a common, it's an uncommon. I would use the initial printing as the basis. It's very, very, very rare for a card to go down in rarity. In fact, I can't think of another example, but a ton of the time, cards go up in rarity, and I would still say go by the initial printing. But the official rules say the only ones banned are the ones that I just mentioned. So basically they banned Storm, 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 and more Storm. So once they removed this big bundle of cancerous garbage from the format, it actually survived and it's really popular. This is why you need a ban list, people. The whole no ban list in Frontier thing is either the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life or the worst design choice I've ever heard of. Neither one of those are very positive. So if I had to pick an alternative Magic format, Pauper all the way. The #1 draw is you can build a deck for like $15. I mean, it's all commons. There's almost no such thing as an expensive common. There are some insanely expensive ones, but they're also insanely old. The most typical deck building strategy that I've heard is either go with an evergreen mechanic or 2 and just build a gimmicky dumb deck like, oh, lifelink death touch, ha ha ha, combat specialty. Or just nothing but first strikers, because that's always a classic, or nothing but flyers, you know, just the most powerful, highest attack power flyers for the mana cost. I've seen that too. So those are, you know, the dumb gimmicky decks, but also you could just take a blocks mechanic and then use it. In fact, you could probably get away with a pretty good Pauper deck just using Kaladesh energy cards. You could maybe get away with like Constellation, maybe Bestow. I mean, both of those kind of flirted with the higher rarities. You might even be able to get away with Devotion, but once again, a lot of those were rare. But for most blocks, you can just go to the common slot and pick out a whole bunch that share a mechanic and just go from there. So that's awesome because a lot of people will have like all of their Kaladesh cards in one box. But the real benefit to this is just completely underestimated. A lot of people think that they're being annoying buying nothing but commons because they're pretty much universally 25 cents. Even if your shop has like a minimum of like, oh, if it's 10 years old, we're just going to call it 50 cents a card no matter what anybody else says. Still, I mean, you're making them dig out a bunch of, you know, old cards from an antique set and then paying them a couple dollars. But there is a huge amount of money in Pauper. I'm a single seller, so I'll break this down as easily as I can. When you open a box, all the foils, the rares, the mythics, everything added together and sold is usually worth between $75 and $100. So you barely get a return, on some you even lose money. Once you have to start selling commons and uncommons in bulk or giant lots or semi-sorted or full sets or sell the lands, that's how you know it's a great set. You know, like for example, Kaladesh. But if you just assume that every booster has, we'll just say 10 commons, because it actually does fluctuate based on, you know, two-sided cards and that kind of thing. But we'll just say it's 10. That means at 25 cents a card, one box has $90 in it in just commons. I mean, when I make a ton of money on a set, it's usually because a couple of the uncommons were worth $2 to $3. I have triple of those, so you can imagine what would happen if I started liquidating a huge portion of my commons. I don't because of shipping costs, but I know people who do. The larger online sellers make all their money on the commons and uncommons. That's where the profit is. You basically break even with the big cards, the heavy hitters, and then after that you make up your money slowly with the commons and uncommons. Ask anybody, that's how it works. That's why we really hate people placing orders for about $2 worth of commons and that's it, nothing else. The envelope, the stamp, all that costs a bit, and I don't even sell them in the first place as singles because I use tracking. So $2.60 per shipment, bare minimum, plus 11 cents for the envelope, plus, I don't know, about 4 cents for the label system. Then there's the paper, then there's the ink, then there's the eBay fees of about 7.8%. It costs about $3 to ship out cards, so I literally cannot sell commons. I can't do it. But for a lot of the huge super sellers, they will sell singles of commons and uncommons because it's very likely that you're going to get your entire deck from them at a time. And even I do that. I go to the biggest seller because I know they'll have them in stock, and I just say, give me this, and it's about 40 cards. Then all they're doing is making a pure profit on the commons and uncommons that I'm ordering. So Pauper, being composed of just commons, is fantastic because you could go back to some terribly money-losing set like Born of the Gods. If 10,000 people suddenly say, hey, that one Born of the Gods common is amazing, we all want it, you could actually single-handedly bring the profitability for one seller to not red. It would be actually profitable retroactively to have opened Born of the Gods. That's how powerful Pauper is, so don't underestimate the value of buying commons. If you play Pauper, you are really helping out the single sellers and really helping out your LGS if they sell singles. Well, depending upon how they open them, how they store them, and how long they've been in business, etc. So if I had to pick a reason, that would be the one I'd tell people to play Pauper, but the big attractive feature is the complete lack of any kind of, cost to build a deck. The main cost is the deck box and the sleeves, let's be honest. If somebody's new to the game and they don't even want to drop $75 on a standard deck, which is bare minimum 2-color deck. I mean, the mana fixing in general just costs that much, and the rest of the cards on average you're looking at $75 for a 2-color standard deck, almost regardless of what's in it. I think these days it might be a little bit lower. You might be able to get away with 50 or 55, depending upon the color combination. But still, that might be a little steep for somebody, especially a 13-year-old who has no job and has poor parents. I think we all know the 13-year-olds who don't have poor parents and they show up with a $600 deck and beat everybody. Oh, or the 9-year-old at my LGS that keeps just stomping everybody. He's unstoppable. He's a heartless, vicious killing machine. Seriously, at the Eldritch Moon pre-release, he took 2nd place. I think he even beat me. Oh, actually, I think it was Shadows. At Eldritch Moon, I Gasella bombed everybody. So if somebody wants to play casually, they don't want to necessarily show up to F&M, which, yeah, they probably, are super new to the game and aren't good enough to play at F&M, which, that shouldn't stop anybody. But still, if that's not their thing, they're not interested in that, they want to move into that later maybe, tell them, hey, Pauper. In fact, you could build 12 Pauper decks. You've got limitless, options. So it's not just, oh, your friend's playing the same stupid decks over and over and over until you all get sick of them. You could switch decks till the cows come home. And then you could either lend decks or just give decks to other people. Or worst case scenario, you tell them, hey, here's, my concept, here's my deck list, or here's, a starting point for you to build a deck. Go for it. And it costs them, $10. Plus, new players making money on, cards that were already written off as a loss, basically, but stored anyway for convenience at your local gaming store. That's a big plus. So definitely check out Pauper. Oh, I'm sorry, it's called Paper Pauper, apparently. Yeah, don't even touch MTGO, that's a whole nother video. Pauper was one of the greatest inventions in all of Magic. It just benefits everybody, benefits the players, benefits the sellers. That even seems like polar opposites. It's fun to play, it never gets old. There aren't really any more decks that just dominate everything else. Even if they do, people don't tend to net deck it except for online. Pauper is just great. It is absolutely great. You totally should look into it. If you have any great Pauper playing stories, leave them down in the comment section because those are always a riot to hear about. And I will see you guys next video.